Let's assume you've read your fair share of screenplays. Maybe you vibe with Tony Gilroy's unique prose, Aaron Sorkin's fast-paced dialogue, or Paul Thomas Anderson's sparse simplicity. Like you, these writers are the products of their influences. They've stolen from the best, learned from the worst, and over time have developed an appetite for what they consider excellent writing. But what makes these writers stand out from so many others who aspire to make screenwriting a career but haven't broken through? Reading screenplays and developing a knack for the craft will only get you so far. You need to be unique. But how? If every story has been told 1,000 times, how do you discover your own unique voice as a screenwriter? I'm Derek with the Top Development team, and today we'll explore how you can refine your writing so your unique voice stands out. And if you're interested in writing your great screenplay with the Top Development team, click the link below this video to work with us. It goes without saying that to write in a way that's unique to you, you must first read and write consistently so the craft becomes second nature. For the purposes of this video, we'll assume you've already written a few screenplays. The goal of this video is to help set you apart from the thousands of other writers who've already done the same. Let's begin. To figure out how to discover your unique voice as a screenwriter, you must first understand, what does having a voice mean? And why is it important to have one? Picasso, Monet, Van Gogh. Look at any of their paintings and there's an intimacy between you and the artist. You're seeing the world through their eyes, a perspective you've never quite considered. What engages us is the sense that we're encountering something so personal to another human being that we feel privileged to even look at it. As screenwriters, we want to create such an intimacy with our readers, to give them a glimpse of the world through our unique perspective. So having a voice as a screenwriter means to convey your personality, experiences, and beliefs in a way that makes your storytelling unique. And it's important to have a voice because writing in an authentic, personal perspective creates a bond with the reader that will keep them engaged. Nothing bores a reader more than reading a story that could have been written by anyone. So how do we discover and express our unique voice? Like Picasso's penciled outlines that got covered with paint, the base layer that will form a screenwriter's vision of their story is the philosophical conflict. The philosophical conflict you choose to explore in your story can reveal your perspective, beliefs, and values, and make the reader question their own, providing them with a new perspective through your distinctive voice. So how do we decide what our philosophical conflict will be for our story? One of the first things we're told as writers is to write what we know. Or better, write about dilemmas that we understand deeply and yearn to explore because we have something unique to say about them. We have something to say, and with our deep understanding of the competing values of our philosophical conflict, we can take the reader on a journey unlike any other. In the 1980s, few filmmakers had a more distinct voice than Oliver Stone. There's no debating that when you read one of his scripts or watched one of his films, you knew who the author was. So how did he do this? Take Platoon. The philosophical conflict at the heart of it is the values of duty and loyalty versus the values of morality and humanity. Stone understands the intricacies of these competing values firsthand because he served as an infantryman in Vietnam. He knows that soldiers are deeply committed to their mission, and they are willing to sacrifice themselves for the sake of their country and their comrades. This sense of duty and loyalty is what bonds them together, and it is what gives them the courage to face the dangers and horrors of war. He also understands that the values of duty and loyalty can be in direct conflict with the values of morality and humanity. Throughout the film, the soldiers are confronted with the atrocities of war and the senseless violence, and this causes them to question the morality of their actions and the purpose of their mission. The audience can sense Stone's authority over the material as both sides of the philosophical conflict are supported by authentic arguments from the characters. In the end, when morality and humanity win out over duty and loyalty, it feels true, and it gives us an intimate look at Oliver Stone's perspective on life. Through balancing the competing values of the philosophical conflict, Stone is telling us, this is how I see the world. A more recent example of a unique voice exploding into the cultural zeitgeist is Neil Blomkamp with District 9. Few can deny that District 9 was a sci-fi film unlike any we had seen in recent years. The film explores the philosophical conflict of prejudice versus empathy. It might not sound like a balanced conflict at first. Of course empathy will win out, right? What gives District 9 its distinct voice is the authenticity with which it examines either side of the conflict. The aliens, or prawns as they're called in the film, are hideous. They speak in a dialect that could be considered frightening, the slums in which they live are dangerous, and they're not exactly friendly towards humans. We understand why the people of Johannesburg would want them gone. Having grown up in South Africa, Blomkamp was exposed to the system of apartheid from a young age. He wanted to explore the themes of how a society could treat the marginalized and oppressed so poorly. By making the aliens as repulsive as possible, he puts the audience in the headspace of the general populace who are prejudiced towards them. Their disgust feels real, not manufactured for the sake of the story. Blomkamp fully understands why someone could be prejudiced in this instance. Then there's the empathy side of the philosophical conflict, the side of the dilemma that one would assume wins out easily. But it doesn't. His entire upbringing, Blomkamp was surrounded by a culture of prejudice, and that prejudice is embodied in the character of Vikas. Vikas, like many of the prejudiced people that Blomkamp encountered firsthand, initially sees the outsiders as little more than pests. But as he spends more time with them, he begins to empathize with them and see them as individuals with their own hopes, fears, and lives. He eventually comes to the realization that the aliens are not so different from humans, and that their treatment is unjust. The journey from prejudice to empathy feels authentic because Blomkamp understands that journey, be it for himself or the people he was surrounded by in his youth. By balancing the competing values of prejudice and empathy in a fair way, Blomkamp is giving us an authentic look into a world of values he knows full well. With Platoon and District 9, Stone and Blomkamp emerged as unique voices by pitting values that they understand on a deep level against each other. Like Picasso, Monet, or Van Gogh, Stone and Blomkamp's work was fashioned in a way that only they could create. So where could the search for your voice go wrong? Going back to Blomkamp, since District 9, the general consensus is that his work is missing what made him stand out with that first film. Visually, he's still a very unique artist, but narratively, he doesn't seem to be saying anything that feels authentic or unique to him. Let's take a look at Blomkamp's follow-up to District 9, Elysium. Elysium is set in a future where the rich have created a luxurious space station where they live in a utopia, while the rest of humanity lives in poverty on a ravaged Earth. The protagonist, Max, is an ordinary man who becomes embroiled in a struggle to gain access to Elysium's advanced technology. Max is driven by a desire for equality and fairness and is willing to risk everything to achieve it. The values at stake in the story are wealth for the few versus equality for the masses. There's nothing inherently wrong with this conflict, except Blomkamp doesn't offer strong arguments for both sides of the dilemma. The Elysium society is depicted as evil to its core. The people are deeply entrenched in their privilege, unwilling to share their resources or even acknowledge the suffering of those on Earth, and are willing to use any means necessary to maintain the status quo. The film suggests that, if only the rich would share their technology, everyone on Earth could live a good life. Anyone in their right mind would agree that, in this instance, the rich should share their resources. It isn't a unique perspective, and it doesn't inspire the viewer to reconsider their perspective in favor of the authors. What could inspire thought is if the Elysium Society had legitimate reason for withholding their technology. What if they had tried in the past and those who inherited their technology used it selfishly and only ended up hurting more people? What Blomkamp could have said about the complexities of the dilemma might have offered us a unique insight into his worldview. But as is, the perspective of the author feels borrowed. Black and white philosophical conflicts are predictable and inherently unoriginal, regardless of how exciting your concept might be. If you want your voice to stand out, you must understand both sides of your philosophical conflict on a deep level and then inject your perspective into the issue at hand stemming from your own experiences. You need to be able to clearly argue for every character in your story, even if they're the antagonist. That's how you get people to listen to what you have to say. That's how you find your voice. You don't need to be a Vietnam veteran to explore loyalty and duty against humanity and morality any more than you need to grow up in apartheid South Africa to explore prejudice against empathy. Whatever dilemmas you choose to explore in your writing, make sure you understand the perspectives on both sides of the philosophical conflict. And with that understanding, you can give your readers your informed and unique take, giving them an insight into your worldview, and in the process, you just might change theirs. Thank you for watching, and if you're interested in fixing your screenplay with the top development team, click the link below this video to work with us.